Hey everyone, I just reviewed the LG C2 OLED TV and, long story short, it's everything I expected. I expected this high-end TV to deliver excellent picture quality, and it certainly does. It also does so at a price, a range of screen sizes, and a long track record that no competitor can match. Here's what you need to know. The C2 is the newest version of my favorite OLED TV of 2021, and the two looked really close in my side-by-side picture quality comparisons. LG has some new tricks up its sleeve, however, so let's check them out. The first thing I noticed when I set up the C2 for the first time was how light it is. I've lifted a lot of 65-inch TVs in my years as a reviewer, and this is easily the lightest. It weighs just 37 pounds, including the stand. For a 65-inch TV, that's like a feather. In comparison, the C1 from last year weighs 72 pounds. LG says it has new carbon fiber materials in the C2, which contributes to the light weight. And the 2022 G2 series is also quite a bit lighter. In addition to making it easier for me and my colleague to set up on a stand, or for anybody to mount on the wall, the feathery weight means the C2 requires less energy to transport and is less likely to be damaged in transit inside the box. So the stand is pretty similar to last year. It's narrower and slightly taller than before, has this nice metallic finish, and I really like the overall look. It also doesn't extend very far to either side, so a lot of TVs have these stand legs to either side. The C2 kind of is suspended looking in comparison, a really nice overall look. LG also changed the corners and the edges of the screen to be just ever so slightly narrower. It really looks like all picture. I wouldn't notice if I didn't see the two TVs side by side, this one and last year's model, but it really does, again, contribute to that all picture look. So let's go around to the back of the TV. The first thing you see is a really clean look. This carbon fiber is darker than last year. It also has a kind of plasticky feel, but plenty sturdy when I set it up. So the input capability of the C2 is excellent. All four of its HDMI are compatible with HDMI 2.1, which helps differentiate it from some other TVs where not every input has that full bandwidth. That's great news for gamers with multiple high-end consoles like an Xbox Series X or a PS5, which can take full advantage of the 4K 120Hz input capability of the television. Of course, the TV also works with VRR, all the bells and whistles you expect from a high-end gaming TV. Let's talk about this remote. LG has the same remote as last year, and I'm really not a big fan. It's kind of a fly swatter. Lots of buttons here, a lot of stuff going on. There's a bunch of shortcuts at the bottom that are branded. Of course, it's nice that there's a scroll wheel, and LG, as usual, allows you to wave the remote around on the screen to get around, similar to a Nintendo Wii. But in general, I really like a simpler remote found on like a Roku or a Samsung television. Speaking of clutter, let's fire up these smart TV menus. Yeah, LG's menus, the home page, not my favorite. There's a lot of stuff going on here. There's time at the top, there's the ability to sign in, there's a few apps at the bottom, but then there's all this other stuff on the screen that really seems to take up too much room. I'd really appreciate if LG kind of cut the clutter, got you right to the apps, and kind of emulated Roku and Samsung, which make these smart TV screens a lot easier to navigate than LG. So enough about the smart TV. Bottom line, if I owned this TV, I would just connect a nice streamer like a Roku Ultra or an Apple TV 4K and avoid these smart TV menus as much as possible. Now, LG does include voice command as an option on the C2. New for 2022, you can actually speak out to ALEXA or GOOGLE, and you can have the TV recognize and respond to those voice commands without having to touch the remote at all. So that's kind of a built-in, always listening feature. Of course, you can also talk into the remote as well to access those voice assistants. So enough about features and design and everything like that. I'm going to talk about picture quality. I brought the C2 into my lab, and one thing I noticed immediately was that OLED awesomeness. It's kind of hard to describe, but the thing about OLED is that it has perfect black levels. So anything that's displayed on the screen is going to start from that perfection of having the black be 100% black and not grayish. Now, the LCD TVs that I had on either side, you could see, especially in a darker room, that gray kind of keep through, especially if there was letterbox bars or another dark area. Now, that's not just in letterbox bars either. That OLED TV image quality really shows up no matter what your room lighting. You can kind of see that extra little pop. It's almost like having that clean canvas of black to work with. Now, one of the downsides of OLED TV before I get really into the picture quality comparisons is burn-in. Yes, OLED TVs are more susceptible to burn-in than standard LCD models. I'll say that, and then I'll also say don't worry about it. Unless you own a sports bar or you're the kind of person who watches CNN literally all day and never turn it off, or one of those channels like that that has the logo in the bottom, it really isn't an issue. I don't think burn-in has been a real issue with this, and LG has done a very good job of creating features that help battle that burn-in. So beyond those black levels and that excellent overall contrast, we also have to talk about color. Now, LG's color with the C2 was superb, but I'll stop by saying the C2 and C1 right next to it, LG's TV from last year, really didn't look all that different. So in my comparisons, I noticed excellent color, excellent contrast. They really both looked really, really good, but LG says that the C2 from this year is a little bit brighter. When I sat down to measure it, I really didn't see that extra brightness. So the C2 and the C1 measured very similarly in terms of their brightness. So really, you're not really getting that much different of picture quality or any difference at all that I could see when I looked at the highest definition HDR content. One of the things that C2 does differently this year is there's a couple extra gaming features. Now, LG C1 last year was an excellent gaming television overall. I really appreciated its game optimizer mode. You can actually go into the game optimizer menu and find different picture modes just for games. So there's a strategy mode, there's a first-person shooter mode, role-playing mode. Those have been added this year in 2022 by a sports mode. Now what these picture modes do is that they adjust black level and brightness differently depending on the modes, and you can actually see that reflected on the screen itself. I really like this ability to tweak the picture modes depending on what game you're playing, or even to ignore what game you're playing and just see what mode looks best. Now, of course, with a lot of games today, you can actually have picture settings built into the game itself, so you gotta see how those two work together. But that extra layer of gaming control, I really appreciate about the Game Optimizer. Another cool thing about Game Optimizer is it shows your frames per second in real time as you're playing. Of course, this TV has 120 frames per second capability, so if you have a game that can do that, it shows it, but it'll also generally max out at 60. Sometimes it'll drop a little bit lower if you have variable refresh rate turned on. So having that real-time display is kind of cool from a nerdy perspective. A lot of other settings available here in the Game Optimizer menu, but overall, this really makes, in combination with its excellent gaming input capabilities, the C2 my favorite gaming TV of the year so far. So you might be asking yourself, should I buy this TV right now? Oh, not so fast. The LG C2 is an excellent television, but there's a lot of competition this year among OLED TVs at the high end. First off, Samsung is having its first OLED TV basically the last decade using QD OLED technology that could take a bite out of some people that want to spend a little bit more money and get a tiny bit better image quality. I won't know until I review it. Sony also has its share of OLED TVs that are probably going to be a little bit more expensive than this C2 as well. In my book, those are great, but I don't know if they're going to be worth the extra money for the picture quality improvement you're going to get. Sure, QD OLED is a brand new tech, it promises to be really cool, but at the end of the day, the track record of this C2 is really strong, and its picture is super duper good. The other side of that is that it has more screen sizes to choose from. So there's a 42 that's brand new for 2022 this year. There's also a 48, 55, 65, 77, and yes, 83-inch size. So really, that's a wide range of screen sizes in OLED. And again, maybe I mentioned this before, this is going to be a little bit less expensive than some of those other competing OLED TVs out there. On the other hand, LG also makes a G2 that they're saying is a little bit brighter. I don't think it's going to be worth the extra picture quality, but does have a slightly different design that's more wall friendly. And LG makes less expensive OLED TVs in the A2 series, for example. That model's probably going to have less picture quality chops, especially because it doesn't have 120 Hz or any of the gaming features that we mentioned before. So really not quite the high-end TV that the C2 promises. This television is right in the middle, excellent picture quality, excellent features, and really that range of screen sizes. So that's a look at LG's C2 OLED TV for 2022. If you want more information, check out the links below in the description, including a review at CNET.com by yours truly. I'm David Katzmeyer.